Welcome back, Cougars. This video is guiding us through our notes for Module 2, Lesson 3, Solving Percent Problems. Specifically today, we're going to be looking at tips and markups. So as you can see on the screen here, this is the notes that are going to be distributed in class or were distributed in class, depending on when you are watching this video. And you would cut this piece of paper in half and adhere it to pages 31 and 32. On the right-hand side here, we are looking at some important vocabulary words to keep in mind. Gratuity is an additional amount of money paid in return for a service. It is also called a tip. And my grandpa, once upon a time, told me that TIP stood for to ensure performance, or to ensure prompt service was another one that I had heard. Markup is the amount the price of an item is increased above the price the store paid for the item. And yes, I am aware of the typo right here. Just write the R in there for me. How you get the markup is you take the selling price and you subtract the wholesale cost, and that is the amount that it is marked up. Selling price is the amount the customer pays for an item. Wholesale cost, the amount a store pays for an item. So when we're solving these percent problems, tips and markups are things that we are typically adding to the original cost if we are marking it up. If we know what that markup price is, then we would be going in the opposite direction. I've given us 4 examples to look at here. I'm going to zoom in. And just like yesterday, what we are finding is the total cost to the nearest cent. And I decided to box in the nearest cent just to give us a reminder that since we're dealing with money, we need 2 decimal digits. In this first example here, it says we have a $20 haircut, and we decided we want to leave this person only a 10% tip. 10% tip is not a very good tip. I think that average in 2022 is 20% tip, but I digress. So our original cost is what we paid for before we added any taxes or tip. And we're not talking about adding taxes today, we're just talking about the tip. So our original cost is $20. And we are going to add a 10% tip, but I haven't asked you to find the tip amount. I've asked you to find the total cost, which is going to be in this location here in the upper right-hand corner. This is just a graphic organizing system that is guiding you through where to put what, so we can go back and use cross multiplication to solve for our unknown. The 100 in the lower left-hand corner is something that we start off with. You can see that I did that over here on 7. I didn't speak about this first. We always start with 100 in the lower left-hand corner. This is our percent column. On the right-hand side is where we're talking about with the amounts. In these examples, we're talking about money. And because we have 10%, we drop the percent sign when we put it into our graphic organizer, because in this strategy, we've already got per 100 or per cent. It's already set up for us. So next, what we need to do is calculate what needs to go in the new percent that we are going to be using to find our total cost. And in order for us to do that, we are going to combine our original percent, which is always going to be 100, with the percent that it's changed. In this case, it's our tip, and we're going to combine them. So it's going to be 110. We've annotated, oops, forgot to circle that. And this would be considered our mathematical drawing. I don't need to fill this in right here. So now we need to write our equation, because these problems, as I've told you in our class, are going to be worth 5 points. So for us to find what our total cost is, we have to go in and multiply the two numbers that we have that are diagonal. So in this case, those are the two numbers that we have that are diagonal. So 110 times 20 divided by 100. And when you go ahead and calculate that cost, the amount that we get is 22. So we found our answer and we need to label it. What was our total cost of this haircut? $22. And I've represented the annotation, I've represented the math drawing, I have my equation, I found my answer, and I've labeled it. 5 points. Number 7, the wholesale cost for a purse in a department store is $12.50. I'm going to circle as I go. The store plans to mark up the purse by 140%. What will be the selling price of the purse? And then they say round to the nearest cent. So the wholesale cost in this situation is our original amount. So I'm going to put $12.50 in the lower right-hand corner. That's our original amount. The markup is going to be 140%. So our markup amount is going to go here. This is how much the percent is changing by, which means the out-the-door cost, the selling price, is going to be 240% of the original cost. I'm going to use the variable S in this situation. So if I identify the numbers that I need to cross multiply, there they are right there. I have annotated, I have a mathematical drawing, now I'm going to write an equation. For us to find the selling price, we need to multiply the two numbers that we have that are diagonal and divide by the number that is left. And we are not using 140 right here because there's nothing next to that in the row next to it. We're using the 1250, so we're dividing by the 100. When we are doing our cross multiplication, what we're technically doing is setting up a proportion that would look something like this if we were going to put it with the typical signs. But we're skipping that step here because we're going straight to using what we know about multiplying the two we have and dividing by the one that's left. When we calculate that amount, my selling price that I have sorry guys, I've got a little malfunction here, excuse me. Boy, I'm struggling. This is not going to work, is it? Apologize for that. Let's go ahead and get back to what we are doing here. All right, when I do all of those calculations, my selling price is 30, and I have to label it for $30 because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about price, which is the label of money. I've annotated, I have a mathematical drawing, I wrote an equation, I found my answer, I labeled it. Number 9, hopefully there's no more malfunctions. Number 9 says a pet store sells a large dog kennel for $98.50. The wholesale cost of the kennel is $63.55. What is the percent of markup? Oh, this one is asking something a little bit different. What is the percent of markup? I am going to put my variable right here on the percent side where I know that it is the markup. So I have given information. The wholesale cost is our original amount before we marked it up, and that was $63.55. Our total cost was $98.50. In order for us to solve this for our percent of markup, we need to know the value that it was marked up by. So you would do some subtraction here. $98.50 minus $63.55 gives us $34.95. If you need to do a little note here to say that you did $98.50 minus $63.55 to get your $34.95 to help you remember for future, you should definitely document that. So now that I know what amount it was marked up by, I can use cross multiplication to identify what our percent of markup is. So to find my markup percent, I'm going to multiply the two numbers that I have that are diagonal. Notice we're going a different route here. I'm going to do 100 times $34.95, and I'm going to divide by the number that's left, which is $63.55. When I do the math for that, I found that my markup amount was $54.996. But if I remember correctly, they asked us to round to the nearest percent. So the nearest percent of this one is just under 55. My markup price is 55%. Number 11 is one of our apply it questions. And right off the bat, you can see that I've already annotated this and I wrote some notes here. So let me walk you through what we've got going on. Up above here, we have a chart. So I don't need to annotate these numbers. They're already organized in a chart. I'm just going to let them be. It says Louise bought a framing canvas online for $125. Then she bought the supplies shown in the table and paid a 7% sales tax only on those supplies, or on those supplies only. She took the amount that she spent on the canvas, the frame, and the supplies, and then she marked up the price by 115%. She wants to make a profit on whatever artwork she's making here. The question is, how much did she charge for her painting? Round to the nearest cent. All these apply questions ask you to do something first. It's multi-steps. So what do you think we need to do first before we can answer the question? It says, how much did she charge for her painting? Well, let's back it up. We know how much the framing canvas was, but we don't know how much the supplies were in the first, after taxes. We know what they were in the first place, their base cost, but then they had to pay 7% sales tax. So I am going to actually, in our regular ISN, I flipped the page open and I did these notes kind of behind on the back there. So I'm going to add this page for the video purposes. So I know that the canvas cost $125. And I'm just going to write canvas under here. And I know that I have to add it to the supplies. So we could figure out how much she paid. That was her cost. So maybe the canvas plus the supplies would equal her cost. I don't know how much she ended up paying out the door for her supplies because, well, they told us this is what she spent and then we had to mark it up. So let's calculate the supplies first. Let's go ahead and do some addition. The brushes and the paint were $12.50 and $19.50, and that got us a total of $32 for the supplies. And I'm just going to put a little note here so I know what I'm doing. So for me to figure out how much she paid out the door, I've got to add 7%. So I'm going to use my organizing strategy. We know that out the door she paid 107%. And so our original cost is $32, and that is what I have to calculate. So there's a few steps here. This is our first step. We've got to multiply the two that we know to find our supplies cost. Oh, I used an N. Excuse me. So N is equal to 107 times 32 divided by 100. And the value that I got here on how much her total bill was for the supplies is $34.24. So that's what I'm going to put in up here by the supplies, is $34.24. Her total cost that she paid out of pocket comes out to be, when you do this addition, $159.24. That's her cost. But we're not done yet. We have to take her cost and now we have to mark it up. So I'm going to draw a little line to kind of separate what we've done here. Mark up. You might not need these little reminders on your paper once you master it, but until you master it, my advice is to label what you're doing by writing reminders. Because right now, while you're looking at it, it might make sense, but when you walk away and come back, you might forget. So we are going to set up our organization system here and start with the 100 in the lower left-hand corner. So in this case, our original price is going to be her cost of, let me use a different color, $159.24. Our book, if you look back at the original problem, tells us that she marked it up by 115%. So her cost that she sells it for was 215% of what she paid. She had to make a profit, right? She's not just doing this for charity. So I'm going to use P for selling price. So now I am going to identify the two numbers that I have that are diagonal that are going to show what I have to multiply. For our selling price, we're going to multiply 215 times 159.24, and we are going to divide it by 100. Using technology for that, you are going to get a value of 342 and 366 hundredths thousandths, so 366 thousandths. But we're talking about money here, so we have to round it to the nearest cent. Here's my cutoff line. When you look next door, you know you're going to have to go up because it's a 6, and our answer is she sold this piece of artwork for $342.37. And let me zoom out a little bit for you here so you can see all the work that it took us to calculate for number 11. You can see why I asked you to tape your notes in on page 31 so that it opens like a window, giving you all that extra space to show the work that you need to show. So Cougars, this is a multi-step problem. There were lots of little steps. We had to do some addition, and we had to do some multiplication, and then we had to do some more multiplication. There's a lot going on here. Take it step by step. Do your best. And remember that when you get into a spot where you are confused, ask questions. I really do love talking about math.